The dense, purple forest was eerily silent. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, and the faint hum of distant creatures echoed through the trees. A human student stood in the center of a clearing, his heart pounding in his chest. He was surrounded. The creature before him was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was massive, with scales that shimmered like molten metal and eyes that glowed a deep, menacing red. Its claws were as long as his forearm, and its teeth looked like they could tear through steel. This was no ordinary predator, it was a killing machine, designed by evolution to be the apex hunter of this planet. The alien teachers watched from their observation deck high above the forest. They had seen this scenario play out countless times before. The student would either fight and lose or run and be hunted down. There was no other outcome. But this student was different. Instead of reaching for his weapon or turning to flee, the human took a slow, deliberate step forward. His movements were calm, almost gentle. He raised his hands, showing the predator that he meant no harm. The alien teachers gasped. "What is he doing?" one of them whispered. "Is he insane?" The human began to speak, his voice steady and low. He didn't know if the creature could understand him, but he hoped it could sense his intentions. "I'm not your enemy," he said. "I don't want to hurt you." The predator tilted its head, its glowing eyes narrowing as if studying him. For a moment, it seemed to hesitate. And then, without warning, it lunged. The human student, known simply as the Earthling among his alien peers, had arrived at the Galactic Academy of Survival Sciences just a few weeks ago. The academy was a sprawling complex of towering crystal spires and floating platforms, nestled on a planet far from Earth. It was a place where the brightest minds from across the galaxy came to learn the art of survival in the universe's most hostile environments. But the Earthling was different. Earth, his home planet, was classified as a death world, a place so dangerous that its inhabitants were considered anomalies. The other students, hailing from planets with gentle climates and predictable ecosystems, viewed him with a mix of curiosity and fear. On his first day, the Earthling had been introduced to his instructors, a group of highly advanced aliens who had mastered the science of survival. There was Zorak, a tall, insect-like being with multiple eyes and a reputation for being ruthless. Then there was Lyra, a graceful, amphibious creature with shimmering blue skin and a calm demeanor. And finally, there was Krell, a hulking, reptilian teacher who rarely spoke but commanded respect with his piercing gaze. "Welcome to the academy," Zorak had said during the orientation. "Here, you will learn to survive in environments that would kill lesser beings. But remember, this is not a place for the weak. Only the strongest will succeed." The Earthling had nodded, determined to prove himself. But he quickly realized that the challenges ahead were unlike anything he had faced on Earth. The Academy's training modules were designed to push students to their absolute limits, and the alien teachers had little patience for mistakes. One day, during a classroom lecture, Zorak had asked the students a question. "What is the most important trait for survival?" The other students had answered with confidence. "Strength," said one. "Intelligence," said another. But the Earthling had remained silent. When Zorak called on him, he hesitated before answering. "Understanding," he said. The room had erupted in laughter. "Understanding?" Zorak had sneered. "Understanding won't save you when a predator is tearing you apart." The Earthling had said nothing, but he knew he was right. On Earth, survival wasn't just about strength or intelligence, it was about understanding the world around you. It was about seeing the connections between all living things and finding a way to coexist. Now, as he stood in the forest, facing the deadly predator, he put that belief to the test. The forest was alive with strange sounds, chirps, growls, and the occasional rustle of leaves. The Earthling moved cautiously, his senses on high alert. This was his first survival test, and he knew the stakes were high. The alien teachers had warned him, fail, and you'll be expelled. Succeed, and you'll prove you belong here. The objective was simple: navigate through the forest and reach the extraction point on the other side. But the forest was no ordinary place. It was a carefully designed training ground, filled with traps, hostile creatures, and unpredictable terrain. The alien teachers watched from their observation deck, their eyes glued to the holographic screens that displayed the Earthling's progress. The Earthling had been given a basic survival kit, a knife, a water purifier, and a small device that could create fire. But he knew that tools alone wouldn't save him. He needed to rely on his instincts and his understanding of the environment. As he moved deeper into the forest, he noticed something strange. The trees seemed to shift and change, as if the forest itself was alive. He paused for a moment, studying the patterns. This isn't natural, he thought. The forest is designed to disorient us. He decided to trust his instincts. Instead of following the path laid out by the academy, he took a different route, one that led him through a dense thicket of vines. The alien teachers frowned. "What is he doing?" Zorak muttered. "He's going off course." But the Earthling had a plan. He knew that the thicket would be difficult to navigate, but it would also provide cover from the predators that roamed the forest. As he pushed through the vines, he heard a low growl behind him. He froze, his heart pounding. Turning slowly, he saw it, a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It was small, about the size of a dog, but its eyes glowed with a fierce intelligence. Its body was covered in sharp spines, and its teeth were bared in a snarl. The Earthling knew he had two options: fight or flee. But he chose a third option, one that surprised even himself. He knelt down slowly, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of dried fruit from his survival kit. Holding it out in his open palm, he spoke softly. "I'm not your enemy," he said. "I just want to pass through." The creature hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing as it studied him. For a moment, it seemed to consider his offer. Then, to the Earthling's relief, it took the fruit and disappeared into the underbrush. The alien teachers were stunned. "Did you see that?" Lyra whispered. "He didn't fight. He didn't run. He communicated." Zorak crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "It's just luck," he said. "Let's see how he handles the real challenge." The Earthling continued through the forest, his confidence growing with each step. But he knew the hardest part was yet to come. Somewhere in the depths of the forest, the apex predator awaited, the creature that had tested countless students before him. And then, he saw it. The predator emerged from the shadows, its massive form towering over him. Its scales shimmered in the dim light, and its glowing eyes locked onto his. The Earthling's heart raced, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was the moment of truth. The predator stood motionless, its glowing red eyes fixed on the Earthling. The air was thick with tension, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The Earthling knew that one wrong move could mean the end. But instead of fear, he felt a strange sense of curiosity. He had studied predators on Earth, lions, wolves, even sharks. He knew that they weren't mindless killers. They were creatures driven by instinct, survival, and sometimes, even emotion. This alien predator, despite its terrifying appearance, was no different. Slowly, the Earthling lowered himself to the ground, making himself appear smaller and less threatening. He kept his movements slow and deliberate, never breaking eye contact with the creature. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly, his voice steady. "I just want to understand you." The predator tilted its head, as if considering his words. Its massive claws twitched, but it didn't attack. Instead, it took a cautious step forward, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. The Earthling remained still, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the heat of the predator's breath as it leaned closer, its glowing eyes narrowing. For a moment, he thought it might strike. But then, something unexpected happened. The predator let out a low, rumbling sound, almost like a purr. It was a sound of curiosity, not aggression. The Earthling's eyes widened in surprise. "You're not so different from me, are you?" he whispered. The alien teachers watched in stunned silence from their observation deck. "This is impossible," Zorak muttered. "No one has ever survived an encounter with the apex predator, let alone communicated with it." Lyra leaned forward, her shimmering blue skin glowing with excitement. "He's not just surviving. He's connecting with it. This changes everything." Back in the forest, the Earthling slowly reached into his survival kit and pulled out another piece of dried fruit. He held it out in his open palm, offering it to the predator. The creature hesitated for a moment, then leaned forward and gently took the fruit from his hand. The Earthling smiled. "See? We're not so different after all." Over the next few hours, the Earthling and the predator began to form an unlikely bond. The Earthling observed the creature's behavior, noting how it moved, how it reacted to different stimuli, and even how it communicated. He realized that the predator wasn't just a mindless killer, it was a highly intelligent being with its own thoughts and emotions. The predator, in turn, seemed to grow more comfortable with the Earthling. It followed him through the forest, keeping a respectful distance but never straying too far. At one point, it even helped him navigate a treacherous ravine, using its massive body to block a sudden gust of wind that threatened to knock him off balance. The alien teachers were baffled. "This goes against everything we know about survival," Krell said, his deep voice filled with disbelief. "He's not fighting the predator. He's working with it." Zorak frowned, his multiple eyes narrowing. "This isn't survival. This is something else entirely." As the Earthling and the predator continued their journey through the forest, they encountered a new challenge, a rival alien student who had been watching them from the shadows. The student, a tall, insect-like being with a reputation for arrogance, stepped into the clearing, a smug grin on his face. Well, the rival said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Look who's making friends with the monster. Too bad it won't save you." The Earthling tensed, sensing the danger. The predator let out a low growl, its glowing eyes narrowing as it stepped between the Earthling and the rival. The rival laughed. "You think that thing will protect you? Let's see how well it does against this." He pulled out a small device and pressed a button. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shake, and a loud roar echoed through the forest. The Earthling's heart sank as he realized what was happening. The rival had activated a trap, one designed to lure the predator into a frenzy. The forest erupted into chaos. The ground trembled violently, and the trees swayed as if caught in a storm. The predator let out a deafening roar, its glowing eyes flashing with rage. The rival alien student smirked, clearly pleased with himself. "You've made a big mistake," the Earthling said, his voice firm despite the fear coursing through him. "This isn't just about me anymore." The rival sneered. "Save your breath, Earthling. You're about to learn why they call this place a death world." The predator lunged forward, its massive claws slashing through the air. But instead of attacking the Earthling, it turned its fury on the rival. The rival's smug expression vanished as he realized his plan had backfired. He stumbled backward, fumbling with his device, but it was too late. The Earthling knew he had to act fast. He couldn't let the predator kill the rival, no matter how much the rival deserved it. "Stop," he shouted, stepping between the predator and the rival. "This isn't you. You're not a killer." The predator hesitated, its glowing eyes locking onto the Earthling's. For a moment, it seemed to struggle with its instincts, torn between rage and the bond it had formed with the human. The rival took advantage of the pause to scramble to his feet and run, disappearing into the forest. The Earthling didn't bother to chase him. His focus was on the predator. "Listen to me," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "I know you're angry. I know you're scared. But this isn't the way. You're better than this." The predator let out a low growl, its massive body trembling with tension. But slowly, its glowing eyes softened, and it took a step back. The Earthling let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The alien teachers watched in stunned silence. "Did you see that?" Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. "He calmed it down. He actually calmed it down." Zorak's expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, respect, perhaps, or even admiration. "This changes everything," he said quietly. Back in the forest, the Earthling and the predator stood together, the tension slowly dissipating. The Earthling reached out and placed a hand on the creature's massive shoulder. "Thank you," he said. "You saved me back there. I won't forget that." The predator let out a soft rumble, almost like a purr, and nuzzled the Earthling's hand. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. As they continued their journey through the forest, the Earthling couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. The rival's sabotage, the predator's unusual behavior, the alien teacher's reactions, it all pointed to a deeper mystery. When they finally reached the extraction point, the Earthling turned to the predator. "I don't know what happens next," he said. "But I'm glad we met." The predator let out a final rumble before disappearing into the forest, its massive form blending seamlessly with the shadows. The Earthling watched it go, a sense of awe and gratitude filling his heart. But as he stepped into the extraction pod, he couldn't help but wonder, what was the predator's true purpose? And why had the alien teachers been so surprised by their bond? The extraction pod hummed softly as it carried the Earthling back to the academy. He sat in silence, his mind racing with questions. The encounter with the predator had left him with more than just a sense of accomplishment, it had sparked a curiosity he couldn't ignore. When the pod landed, the Earthling stepped out to find the alien teachers waiting for him. Their expressions were a mix of awe, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite place. Zorak was the first to speak. "You survived," he said, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "And not only that, you formed a bond with the apex predator. How did you do it?" The Earthling shrugged. "I didn't do anything special. I just treated it with respect. I tried to understand it." Lyra stepped forward, her shimmering blue skin glowing with excitement. "This is unprecedented. No student has ever connected with the predator like that. Do you realize what this means?" The Earthling frowned. "What do you mean? Isn't that the point of the test, to survive?" Zorak exchanged a glance with Lyra before answering. "The test is designed to push students to their limits. The predator is the ultimate challenge, a creature so dangerous that most students don't survive the encounter. But you did more than survive. You changed the game." The Earthling's curiosity grew. "What aren't you telling me? What's really going on here?" The teachers hesitated, as if weighing their words carefully. Finally, Krell spoke, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. "The predator is not native to this planet. It was brought here for a specific purpose, one that goes beyond simple survival training." The Earthling's eyes widened. "What purpose?" Zorak sighed. "That's classified information. But suffice it to say, your actions have raised questions we may not be able to answer." The Earthling felt a surge of frustration. "If there's something I need to know, you should tell me. I deserve to know." Lyra placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "We understand your concern. But some secrets are kept for a reason. For now, focus on your training. You've proven yourself to be a remarkable student. That's all that matters." The Earthling wasn't satisfied, but he knew pressing further wouldn't get him answers. As he left the observation deck, he made a decision: he would find out the truth, no matter what it took. Over the next few days, the Earthling began to investigate. He spent hours in the Academy's archives, searching for any information about the Predator. He talked to other students, hoping to piece together clues. But the more he dug, the more he realized how tightly the secret was guarded. One night, as he was poring over a stack of old records, he found something unusual: a faded document with the words, Project Nexus, scrawled across the top. The details were sparse, but one line caught his attention: Subject exhibits unprecedented levels of intelligence and adaptability. Potential for interspecies cooperation remains untested. The Earthling's heart raced. Could this be about the Predator? And if so, what was Project Nexus? Before he could read further, he heard footsteps approaching. He quickly hid the document and pretended to be studying a different file. Zorak entered the room, his multiple eyes scanning the area suspiciously. "What are you doing here?" Zorak asked, his tone sharp. The Earthling forced a smile. "Just brushing up on my survival techniques. I want to be ready for the next test." Zorak studied him for a moment before nodding. "Good. But don't overdo it. Rest is just as important as training." As Zorak left, the Earthling let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He knew he was onto something, but he also knew he had to be careful. The Academy's secrets were deeper than he had imagined, and uncovering them could put him in danger. But he couldn't stop now. The Predator had trusted him, and he owed it to the creature to find out the truth. The Earthling couldn't sleep that night. His mind was consumed with thoughts of the Predator and the mysterious Project Nexus. He knew he was close to uncovering the truth, but he also knew the risks. The Academy's secrets were guarded for a reason, and prying too deeply could have consequences. The next morning, he decided to take a different approach. Instead of digging through archives, he would go straight to the source, the Predator itself. If anyone could give him answers, it was the creature he had bonded with. He waited until the Academy was quiet, then slipped out of his quarters and made his way to the forest. The dense, purple trees loomed ahead, their shadows stretching across the ground like grasping fingers. The Earthling moved quickly but cautiously, his senses on high alert. When he reached the clearing where he had first encountered the Predator, he stopped and called out softly. "Are you there?" "It's me." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a low rumble echoed through the trees, and the Predator emerged from the shadows. Its glowing eyes locked onto the Earthling, and it let out a soft purr of recognition. The Earthling smiled. "I knew you'd come. I need your help. There's something going on here, something big. And I think you're a part of it." The Predator tilted its head, as if considering his words. Then, it turned and began to walk deeper into the forest. The Earthling hesitated for a moment before following. They traveled for what felt like hours, the forest growing darker and more oppressive with each step. Finally, they reached a hidden cave, its entrance partially obscured by thick vines. The Predator stopped and gestured toward the cave with its massive head. The Earthling's heart raced as he stepped inside. The cave was dimly lit, but he could see strange markings on the walls, symbols and diagrams that looked like some kind of alien language. In the center of the cave was a large, metallic object that resembled a control panel. As he approached the object, he noticed a small screen flickering to life. Words began to appear, written in a language he didn't recognize. But as he watched, the words shifted and changed, forming a message he could understand. Project Nexus, Interspecies Cooperation Initiative. Subject Alpha, Apex Predator. Status, active. The Earthling's eyes widened as he read the message. "So it's true," he whispered. "You're part of an experiment." The Predator let out a low rumble, its glowing eyes filled with what looked like sadness. The Earthling felt a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry," he said. I didn't know. But I promise, I'll find a way to help you. As he continued to explore the cave, he found more documents and recordings, evidence of a secret project designed to test the limits of interspecies cooperation. The Predator had been brought to the Academy not as a test for students, but as a test for itself. The alien teachers had been studying its behavior, trying to determine if it was capable of forming bonds with other species. But the Earthling realized something else: the project had gone far beyond simple observation. The Predator had been subjected to experiments, forced to endure pain and isolation in the name of science. It was no wonder the creature had been so aggressive at first; it had been pushed to its breaking point. The Earthling's hands clenched into fists. "This is wrong," he said, his voice filled with anger. "You're not just some experiment. You're a living being, and you deserve better." The Predator let out a soft growl, as if in agreement. The Earthling knew what he had to do. He couldn't let the Academy continue this project. He had to expose the truth, no matter the cost. But as he turned to leave the cave, he heard a voice behind him. "I knew you'd figure it out." The Earthling spun around to see Zorak standing in the entrance, his multiple eyes glowing with an eerie light. Behind him were Lyra and Krell, their expressions unreadable. "You've been asking too many questions," Zorak said, his tone cold. "And now you've seen too much." The Earthling took a step back, his heart pounding. "You can't keep this a secret forever. People deserve to know the truth." Zorak's lips curled into a grim smile. "The truth is dangerous, Earthling. Sometimes, it's better left hidden." The Predator let out a fierce roar, stepping between the Earthling and the teachers. Its glowing eyes burned with defiance, and its massive body tensed, ready to fight. The Earthling felt a surge of gratitude. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. "I don't want you to get hurt." But the Predator stood its ground, its loyalty unwavering. The Earthling knew there was no turning back now. The cave was filled with tension, the air thick with the unspoken threat of conflict. The Predator stood protectively in front of the Earthling, its glowing eyes locked onto the alien teachers. Zorak, Lyra, and Krell stood at the entrance, their expressions a mix of caution and resolve. "You don't understand what's at stake," Zorak said, his voice low and measured. "Project Nexus is more than just an experiment. It's about the survival of countless species across the galaxy. The Predator is a key to understanding interspecies cooperation, something that could prevent wars and save lives." The Earthling shook his head, his voice firm. "There's a difference between understanding and exploitation. What you've done to this creature, keeping it isolated, forcing it into experiments, that's not cooperation. That's cruelty." Lyra stepped forward, her shimmering blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light of the cave. "We never wanted to harm it," she said, her tone pleading. "But sometimes, sacrifices must be made for the greater good." The Earthling's eyes narrowed. "The greater good? That's just an excuse. You're so focused on your goals that you've forgotten what it means to be alive. This Predator isn't just a tool for your experiments, it's a living being, with thoughts and feelings. And it deserves better." Krell, who had remained silent until now, spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. "You speak of understanding, Earthling. But do you truly understand the consequences of your actions? If we shut down Project Nexus, we risk losing everything we've worked for." The Earthling took a deep breath, his resolve unwavering. "Sometimes, doing the right thing means letting go of what we think we need. If you truly believe in cooperation, then prove it. Let the Predator go. Let it live freely, without being a pawn in your experiments." For a moment, the cave fell silent. The alien teachers exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions conflicted. Finally, Zorak sighed, his multiple eyes narrowing. "You leave us no choice. If you won't stand down, then we'll have to take matters into our own hands." He raised a small device, its surface glowing with a faint, ominous light. The Earthling recognized it immediately. It was a control device, designed to subdue the predator. The predator let out a fierce roar, its massive body tensing as it prepared to defend itself. The Earthling stepped forward, placing a hand on the creature's shoulder. "It's okay," he said softly. "We'll face this together." Zorak pressed a button on the device, and a high-pitched sound filled the cave. The predator flinched, its glowing eyes flickering with pain. But it didn't back down. Instead, it lunged forward, its massive claws slashing through the air. The Earthling moved quickly, grabbing a loose rock from the ground and hurling it at Zorak. The rock struck the device, knocking it from his hand. The high-pitched sound ceased, and the predator let out a triumphant roar. Lyra and Krell hesitated, clearly unsure of what to do. The Earthling seized the moment. "This doesn't have to end in violence," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We can find another way, a way that doesn't involve hurting anyone." Zorak glared at him, his expression filled with frustration. But before he could respond, the ground beneath them began to shake. The walls of the cave trembled, and dust rained down from the ceiling. "What's happening?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with panic. The Earthling's eyes widened as he realized the truth. "The cave, it's collapsing. We need to get out of here, now." The predator let out a low growl, gesturing toward a narrow passage at the back of the cave. The Earthling nodded. "This way. Follow me." The group hurried through the passage, the walls shaking around them as the cave began to collapse. The predator led the way, its massive body clearing a path through the debris. The Earthling stayed close behind, with the alien teachers following reluctantly. As they emerged into the open air, the cave collapsed behind them with a deafening roar. The group stood in stunned silence, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The Earthling turned to the alien teachers, his expression serious. "This is your chance to do the right thing. Let the predator go. End Project Nexus. And find a better way to achieve your goals, one that doesn't involve sacrificing innocent lives." Zorak looked at the predator, then at the Earthling. For the first time, his expression softened. "Perhaps, you're right," he said quietly. "Perhaps we've lost sight of what truly matters." Lyra nodded, her shimmering blue skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. "We'll shut down the project," she said. "And we'll find a new way forward, one based on understanding, not exploitation." The Earthling smiled, a sense of relief washing over him. He turned to the predator, placing a hand on its massive shoulder. "You're free now," he said softly. "You can live your life the way you were meant to." The predator let out a soft rumble, its glowing eyes filled with gratitude. Then, with a final glance at the Earthling, it turned and disappeared into the forest, its massive form blending seamlessly with the shadows. The forest was quiet now, the tension of the past few days replaced by a sense of calm. The Earthling stood at the edge of the trees, watching as the predator disappeared into the shadows. He felt a mix of emotions, relief, gratitude, and a deep sense of accomplishment. The alien teachers stood nearby, their expressions thoughtful. Zorak was the first to break the silence. "You've given us much to think about, Earthling," he said, his tone softer than before. "Perhaps we've been too focused on our goals to see the bigger picture." Lyra nodded, her shimmering blue skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. "You've shown us that true cooperation isn't about control or dominance. It's about understanding, respect, and trust." Krell, who had remained quiet for most of the encounter, spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. "You've proven that even the most unlikely bonds can form when we open our minds and hearts. That is a lesson we will not forget." The Earthling smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "I'm glad you see it that way. But this isn't just about the Predator or Project Nexus. It's about how we treat all living beings. Every creature, no matter how different, deserves respect and compassion. Zorak sighed, his multiple eyes reflecting the moonlight. You're right. We've been so focused on the science of survival that we forgot the heart of it. Survival isn't just about strength or intelligence, it's about connection. And you've reminded us of that. As the group made their way back to the academy, the Earthling couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. He had come to the academy to prove himself, but he had ended up learning something far more valuable, the power of empathy and the importance of standing up for what's right. When they reached the academy, the Earthling turned to the teachers one last time. What happens now? He asked. Zorak exchanged a glance with Lyra and Krell before answering. We'll shut down Project Nexus and re-evaluate our methods. And as for you? He paused, a rare smile crossing his face. You've earned your place here. Not just as a student, but as a teacher. Your actions have taught us all a valuable lesson. The Earthling felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, he said. But I couldn't have done it alone. The Predator taught me as much as I taught it. And in the end, we all learned something. As the days passed, the academy began to change. The alien teachers introduced new programs focused on empathy and understanding, and the students were encouraged to approach challenges with an open mind. The Earthling became a mentor to his peers, sharing the lessons he had learned from his bond with the Predator. One evening, as the Earthling stood on the Academy's observation deck, he looked out at the forest where his journey had begun. He thought about the Predator, wondering where it was and if it was thriving in its newfound freedom. A soft rumble echoed through the trees, and for a moment, he thought he saw a pair of glowing eyes in the distance. He smiled, knowing that the bond they had formed would never be broken. As he turned to leave, he felt a sense of peace. He had come to the academy to prove himself, but he had left with something far greater, a deeper understanding of what it means to survive, to connect, and to truly live. And as he walked away, he carried with him a lesson he would never forget. In a universe full of differences, it is our ability to understand and connect that makes us truly strong.